guys, what's going on? You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, and I'm not alone as I trek into the month of March here, and it's a wonderful spring day here in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, but I'm not alone as I journey into the strange, the unusual, the world of entertainment, news, strange events, and all sorts of other bizarre things that happen. I'm joined by my co-host in the city of Kitchener,
Alex, the producer.
Yeah, I was actually trying to have a little bit of fun there, but I kind of got a little sidetracked, so But yeah, it's a wonderful day here.
Pre-spring, but it feels like spring, except it's cold, but it's nice and bright, clear skies.
Yeah, like supposedly this week we're supposed to get up into the double digits, and there's no ice and snow anymore, so hopefully I can get out in my wheelchair. I can go to the Tim Hortons next door, get a coffee and some naan bread from my favorite place. There's a place is called Hellman Kebab, run by a rather nice guy named Wally, and really looking forward to that. Maybe me, Blair, and Liam will go outside and enjoy some of the nice pre-spring weather. So that'll be nice. I mean, haven't seen the sun a whole lot in the last few months. The most sun I saw is when I was in the hospital a couple of weeks ago. Cause man, that wasn't fun.
Hospital sun isn't always the most fun sun.
Although it was kind of interesting. I saw my most sunsets and sunrises I've seen in a while, just because where I am in my apartment, I can't see a whole lot. I see sun, but I don't see a lot just because I've got like a refrigerator in the way that my building is set. So it's kind of however, though, looking forward to getting outside more this spring. I guess hopefully things will stay nice. Hopefully, with the pandemic numbers slowly coming down with the vaccine rollout here in Canada and in Ontario,
and I'm sure that
change. I know
you're probably in what would be the next tier phase of people to get vaccinated, because you're considered a profoundly high risk, but you're not in that over 80 category, right?
Yeah, actually, I signed up for the vaccine. I can go get it almost immediately. The problem is, because I was in the hospital a few weeks ago, we found out what was wrong with me, more or less. And it was theorized that I have, now it's either one of two things. I have gallstones for sure, but I have no pain, which is a good thing. Or I have what's called drug-induced hepatitis. And what that means is, I have a problem with my liver right now. It's not working as well as it should. There might be a blockage in my common bile duct, which is leading to a buildup of something called bilirubin. And that just means I have a little bit of jaundice still, and that means I go to the bathroom a lot. However, though, that being said, I have weekly blood work for the last couple of weeks, and it's been coming back. My liver enzymes are getting better, which is good. We want that, but certain levels aren't coming down yet. So worst comes to worst, I got to stick something down my throat, clear me out. There's a remote possibility I may have to have some surgery, but they don't think that'll happen.
Gallbladder's a simple enough one if it has to happen.
Yeah, so I'm not even remotely worried about it. Like, I'll be in and out in a couple of days. If it's a surgery, if it's a scope, I'll be in and out in a few hours. So pain in the ass, such as it may be, whatever. It just means I'm behind on certain things. I was actually telling Alex before we started recording today, I've been so tired and sleepy because I've been focused on healing. I haven't even turned on my PlayStation in like a week because I really wanted to play some Persona 5 Strikers, and I haven't even had a chance to play that, which really sucks.
Just be glad it's not like Nintendo games where they put them in the vault, like right? You can play it whenever you want. At least it's not like Mario where it's going away.
Yeah. Although me and my wife have been marathoning Hell's Kitchen on Amazon Prime. We are up to season 15 now.
Is it a trade-off
on there?
Is it a trade-off that you get to watch that and then you have to be forced like torture to watch Felicity?
Okay, so me and Blair were watching Felicity last night, which I didn't know had a background with J.J. Abrams. So I'm watching it, and I called it, and I don't mean to sound like this, but it was basically White Woman, the series. And I was half asleep, and I'm listening to the dialogue as I'm trying to go to sleep. And Felicity's complaining about fucking hamburgers. to her parents because evidently she went to this place in New York to chase a boy. And she's like, it was the best hamburger I ever had. I'm like, you vanilla white bread motherfucker. And it was just so dumb. And then randomly John Cho shows up.
Like New York burgers are good, but they're not. I'm going to get hate, but they're not the best burgers.
No, I think the best burgers you'll get will be in Texas and California, in my opinion.
And
maybe somewhere in like you might Tennessee, maybe.
You might argue Calgary.
Yeah.
Montana. Wherever the beef is going to be the best place to get it.
But yeah, I was just like, what the flying fuck? And it was just all these irritating problems. And then she steals some guy's mail. And I was just like, oh my God. And then even Blair kind of rolls me over and says, you know what? Maybe this doesn't hold up as well as I thought it did. I'm thinking, yeah, you fucking think.
Like the Gilmore Girls or anything from the 90s, early 2000s?
Well, it's funny. The Gilmore Girls dialogue somewhat holds up, but I don't think the show itself does. I don't know. I'd have to go back. Yeah, I don't know. See, I like the woman who plays Lorelai Gilmore. I can't think of her name.
The mother?
Not Alexis. Yeah, the mom. I love her delivery, but the daughter throws me off.
See, I always get thrown off because I never watched that show. My first introduction to her was in Bad Santa, where she has a Santa fetish. So
yeah,
I have a wildly different experience, and then trying to watch that show, and then all I'm seeing in my head is "fuck me Santa, fuck me Santa." I'm like, no, this is a completely different. She can play a few different types of roles at least, and I think she's going to be in the new Mighty Ducks TV show on Disney.
I think so, and I think that launches like next week or the week after,
something like that.
Pretty soon, anyway.
Isn't it right, like for Easter time or something?
I think so, or premieres just after Falcon and Winter Soldier, so pretty soon. I mean, either way. Speaking of things, so one of the things I love to do is I love watching things on YouTube that are old. I'm a big nostalgia guy, and one of the things I've been going down the rabbit hole is I found old Saturday morning cartoon blocks complete with commercials. And I found one cartoon block that was from ABC in 1988. And it starts off innocently enough with the Geek Care Bear series. If you're a Canadian kid, you're very familiar with this show because you would be surprised how many members of the Royal Canadian Air Force voice characters on this show.
And because it was
I'm watching
it was in perpetuity in reruns here.
Yeah, so we watched it, and the episode that we watched, me and Blair, has some terrifying implications. And it involves, there's this town, and there's this guy called Sour Sam the Pie Man, and he's feeding people Krabby Apple Pie because he has this hate boner on to cancel Thanksgiving. No real reason or rhyme behind it. He's like, man, fuck Thanksgiving. I'm going to make these people so crabby so they don't care anymore. I'll do what No Heart couldn't do and destroy the Care Bears. Okay, fine. And then randomly there's a subplot with Grandma Bear, who I don't know who she's the grandma to, I guess everybody, who's like a biker with riding leathers.
Cool grandma.
So yeah, cool grandma. But so this town starts eating Krabby Apple Pie and everybody becomes angry and pissy and shit. And I got to thinking about this, probably a little too in depth as I'm most prone to go do. And people don't care. People are crabby. They're angry. And I got to thinking, well, what if someone ate the Krabby Apple Pie who was in charge of, say, the nuclear codes? And if they just stopped caring one day, and if you were to push that person just a little too far, they're not going to care if they just hit, the dead man's hand switch. So Sour Sam could literally be a horseman of the apocalypse.
Well, did you
set off the chain of events?
Did you watch The Dead Zone when you were in the hospital?
Yeah. So literally, Sour Sam could have caused the fucking Dead Zone.
Thinking about that. That, by the way, one of the few Martin Sheen movies where he plays a truly despicably evil person. Usually he's a bit of both, but like in that when he goes insane and he's like, I dreamt God talked to me, and I'm the future daddy. You gotta put your hand on this, and he launches all the nukes. That's what I'm picturing in my head, but I'm picturing a Care Bear doing it.
But yeah, it was so weird. And then they go to Sour Sam's warehouse, by the way. He's like, I've got enough Krabby Apple pies to take over the world. I'm thinking, well, I don't think so. Just from a purely logistical standpoint, that he has this device, which is like a pie-mounted turret, complete with like a gun device that could aim just like those old World War II battleship-mounted guns. And I'm about to say, that's an awfully specific device to have in your warehouse for just such an occasion.
To shoot pies anywhere you want.
Yeah, to shoot pies at people.
Now,
and I just got
thinking of Homer Simpson when he made his makeup shotgun. Marge, hold still. Bang! So Homer, you've got it set to horror. Oh, sorry. 1 second. Let me. But then I'm also thinking, it's like, oh my god. I found a big flaw in his plan that you might not have thought about. He chose the wrong kind of fruit. Because apples only grow in certain temperate zones, and they can only grow a couple times a year. It's going to take way longer. He should have picked a fruit that can grow pretty much anywhere at any time.
Yeah. There is another thing that I noticed. There's at one point Sour Sam kidnaps Grandma Bear and puts her into this giant pie work, and she's held in by literal strips of pastry. She's held in by latticework pies, and he's like, I'm going to bake you into a pie, twirly mustache. A
bear pie would be very tough and gamey.
So eventually she escapes, but Sour Sam gets put into the same pie device and is actually baked into a pie.
So they murder him on the Care Bears?
He comes out the other side.
The Care Bears later seasons must have been strange.
No. Yes and no. So he comes out the other side, but Graham's turned him into a happy apple pie, but he's still steaming. So which means at some point his body was subjected to severe temperature differences, but now he's bipolar because he's like, I'm still angry. I'm happy now.
Wait, he's the Two-Face of the Care Bears universe?
Yes. They have inadvertently created the Joker or Two-Face with Sour Sam and Happy Apple Pie. I've looked at this entirely too much.
Oh, good Lord.
But yeah, I really got to thinking about this.
That was your week, eh?
Yeah, that was my week. What about you?
For once, compared to the last few weeks, pretty busy. I was helping around the house at my grandma's place and getting some internet stuff working, which it turns out right after I left, my mom may have got a virus on her computer, so I'm going to have to figure out what she did. Oh, I clicked a Amazon ad on Facebook. Amazon doesn't make ads on Facebook. Oh, I know that now. It's like, So
was your mom looking at pornography?
No, not through Facebook, not through an ad there. I don't even know if they sell true pornography on Amazon. But anyway, she has like apparently a little pencil looking thing on the bottom right of her screen, and when she clicks it, something happens. I'm like, don't click anything. Stop. So I'll figure that out in the next few days, but that's beside the point. I did finally I got like not my tax return, but I got like an energy benefit thing come in from filling up my taxes. So I was finally able to get a monitor that supports 120 or in this case 144 hertz. So we can finally start doing reviews for high refresh rate games on the show because it works has HDMI 2.0, so it's not just some of the monitors that do high refresh rates are only on high refresh rate on the using DisplayPort. But this is HDMI 2.0 on the back as well. So I tried it with the Xbox and it works just fine. And it has variable refresh rate support. So basically every feature that is available on the Xbox and on the PlayStation, I don't think has that. But every feature that's on next gen is now supported on one of my monitors. So even HDR, but I mean, if I'm going to play a game in HDR, I may as well play it on my big screen. But still, that's hooked up and all working. That took a bit to configure. I got a second a second TV stand that's identical to the one I already had, because my TV, the one I got in the summertime, just ever so slightly, you can see a bend happening in the table. And I'm like, that is not something I want to break because it's a cheapy IKEA. So my solution was, don't spend $100 on a table. Spend $15 getting the same cheap table, assemble it right in front, put them front to back together, and then spread the weight across 8 legs instead of 4. Right? So, and now it seems perfect. I even have room to put my center speaker in front instead of above. So the vocals are clearer to listen to. But that was a bit of an interesting thing because the IKEA instructions were 100% wrong. Because and I can't say that with just me being like, oh, I couldn't read the instructions. I actually went to college for blueprint reading. And the blueprints and instructions, the technical documents were actually misprinted. So I'm like, and I sent them and explained it. And they probably had people do that, but it was just, they had some things backwards. They also had some measurements off, and I'm like, that's not right. They also had the scale was wrong on one thing. The instructions themselves looked easy. The problem was they didn't actually correlate properly. But yeah, so that was an interesting, what should have been 15 minutes turned into an hour and a half project to put together. I've been playing Bravely Default 2, which we're going to have a review in the show for that. I've also been catching up on shows. I still haven't finished WandaVision. I'm going to finish that after we record now, and I'm catching up on a few other shows. The big thing I did while I was visiting my mom and helping out at her place was I had never seen it. You've heard of the miniseries North and South that ran for, I think, 3 miniseries in the 80s. Well, there's a brand new remastered version available, so we started watchwatching that, and I've never seen it. So it's Patrick Swayze, or as I like to call it, Baby Swayze, because he was like 22. And Jonathan Frakes is in there pre Star Trek. So Baby Frakes is there. Tons of other famous actors that were from that time period. And it's been remastered, and it was, you could see it was high budget for the time. The music doesn't hold up, and the kissing is hilarious. It looks like they're eating each other's faces. It's like the worst kind of fake TV kissing you've ever imagined, because it was on ABC, and who knows what they were allowed to get away with. But the action, I was like, oh, it's going to be crappy TV action for the mid 80s. No, there's like explosions, people falling apart, and all this stuff. I'm like, holy crap. They got away with a lot more on the ABC miniseries back then. So we watched most of the first miniseries, and I'm going to watch the second and third ones over the course of the week, just because, once you're in, you're hooked, right? So that's pretty much been my week as far as that goes, because Bravely Default 2 was like a 50-hour game, right? So that's that, and I know I've got more coming up soon, but that's sort of been I didn't watch any Care Bears, unfortunately, but I might have to now.
Like I said, the show hits a little different when you're a little bit older. But as always, we have lots of stuff to talk about from the world of entertainment and beyond. I know Alex said he's going to have a review of Bravely Default 2 coming from myself, and we're going to be taking a look at a release from Paramount Home Entertainment. We're going to be looking at the John Hughes 5 movie collection on Blu-ray and digital, which includes Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, She's Having a Baby, Pretty in Pink, and a movie I've never seen, Some Kind of Wonderful, with Eric Stoltz. What's the other title you're going to be covering today, Alex?
I have Monster Jam Steel Titans 2. I think I reviewed the first one when it came out. Was it last year or the year before? But I've had a chance to check that out, and that should be in the show as well.
All right, cool. So we will talk about all this and more right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. Please keep it locked. And we're going to throw things to Alex. This is Bravely Default 2.
Our friends at Nintendo sent over a review code for Bravely Default 2 on the Nintendo Switch. This is the new Square Enix title in the Bravely series. Confusingly enough, it follows the Final Fantasy naming scheme of not necessarily making it the easiest to follow, in that there was Bravely Default 1, then Bravely 2nd, now Bravely Default 2. Bravely 2nd obviously being the second in the franchise, but not now. I guess this is sort of the realm of the last one used, I guess, a similar engine, I guess, is maybe the reasoning behind that. And then this is on a new platform, a new generation. and we go from here. So I'll start by saying that my history with the franchise is I played the first one, and it was one of the must-have RPGs on the platform. Bravely second, it's weird. I have the soundtrack from the collector's edition that I'm pretty sure I purchased, but I don't remember ever playing, and I currently don't own it. So I don't know what happened there. So I'll talk about how the first game had a pretty standard homage to the 90s, late 90s, like 96 to 2001-ish style of RPG that we were used to when that was, I guess, at the height of the JRPG craze before Final Fantasy VII had caught on with every company to make everything much more cinematic and the push to massive graphical updates. This is still back firmly when the scenario design and the story and the RPG gameplay loop of the grinding and the management of your characters and job classes was the most important part of the game. This Bravely Default 2 takes that and refines it much more. You've got your standard job classes, your white mage, red mage, black mage, and so on. And then they put a bit of a twist on it with some of the later classes that you get in the game. Off the top of my head, without looking at the game, there's got to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. There's somewhere in the realm of 16 to 20 job classes, I think, because it's been a bit of a blur. I spent the better part of a week playing it. I ended up with a playtime before completion of 45 hours. Add another 10 on there to do some of the post-game stuff. And then there's a couple more secrets that I just discovered later on. But the basic premise of the game is... It's almost like one of those isekai animes, but it doesn't really get into that till later on. You are the main protagonist, the default name being Seth. You are shipwrecked. You are talked to by the Wind Crystal and given the opportunity to revive yourself and live. And you're sent to this island, which is the world, essentially, of multiple nations that have befallen hard times because the crystals are taken away. The defenders of the crystals, the nation that had it, Musa, has been destroyed. There's an empire, yada yada yada. Pretty standard. It's an homage to Final Fantasy. If you liked Final Fantasy IX, which was a direct homage to all the previous Final Fantasies at the time, this is more all of the Final Fantasies, the Square Enix games. Take a bit of the Mana games, put in there. Square Enix franchises are all sort of represented, minus the Enix Dragon Quest stuff. And then sprinkle in some other games from other companies, like, what was that one on the DS? Nostalgia, I think it was. A little Skies of Arcadia feel without the airships itself. And just that era of Saturn / PS1 / all the way up to the GameCube of JRPG. That's the feel you get from playing this. It does have quality of life updates from those games in that you can have 4 different speeds at which you can play your battles in. And if you play it at the fastest speed, it can be hard to follow what's happening unless you're just grinding through. They've also added the ability to eat meat from different animals that are dropped. And if you do so, when you fight them on the battlefield, which, by the way, there are no random battles. You see every enemy out there, and they can chase you, you can run away, you can attack them to enter battle. I always liked that style when they added that. It'll do a chain reaction where you can fight up to 6 different battles at once, and doing so raises the amount of job points that you can get as a collective by a percentage marker. If you do 6 battles in a row, if it randomly decides to do that, you'll get 3 times the collective total of job points for all of them. And if you pair that with the freelancer, which is your default job, you can earn, if you get to level 12 of that, you'll get 2 abilities that you can equip in slots, very similar to like materia or job ability spots. You can have so many slots for that. You can equip 2 that give you a total of 1.7 times the job points collected for that. So, and they do stack. So 1.7 and then times the 3 that you get And then on top of that, later on in the game, if you really want to grind to get, to max out your stats, to have like an invincible maxed out legendary party of every person having every class maxed out, you're actually able to do that fairly quickly, because you can also get something called growth eggs, which double the amount of experience and job points you get. So you can get it is a multiplier on top of the base level. So you'll get 2 times the points there. Then on top of that, if it's in a chain battle, you'll get multiplied by 3 times there on top of that, so it compounds. And then if you have the freelancer skills equipped, you'll take that final number and multiply it by 1.7. And you can, if you do it right, you can max out a level to the legendary level, which you get from beating the game once, which I'll get into. Legendary takes it from level 12 to level 15 for each of the job classes. You can do it in one fell swoop. So you could do, basically, if you plan it correctly, 20 battles, or 20 times at 4 times speeds of battling once you're at a high enough level. And within about an hour and a half, you could have every single character maxed out if you really wanted to, and you plan it properly. So they did think of that too, the longevity, and just not having to completely monopolize your time once you've beat the game and you just want to see everything maxed. So that's cool. And the game is broken up story-wise into a lot of voice-acted segments, probably more than I've ever seen for a game that was this style of this budget. This isn't like your AAA Xenoblade game, like your AAA JRPG on here, or your Final Fantasy proper. But this has, I would say, the most voice acting I've seen from a Nintendo published. This is a Square Enix produced, but it's a Nintendo published title. We're talking probably hours of spoken dialogue for every character. And even that's just with cutscenes that are built into the game engine that are main plot points. Then there's side quests that you can accept from people, and if they're with story-based characters or NPCs that you interact with more often, those have fully voiced characters and moments that you talk to. Then occasionally you can have party talking times where you go into a scenario just like the Tales games would have, where your party talks about an event that just happened. Those are usually not voiced, but they add a lot to the story itself. So there's lots of full dialogue, and you can skip it if you want to, if you've played through it once, or you just don't want to see the extra dialogue, but you want to maybe accept the quest and move on. There is, I will say this right now, the one major thing I didn't care for is a lot of running back and forth. There isn't fast travel in the way that I would like. Once you've gone to one of the main towns, you can fast travel between towns by talking to a horse carriage, horse and buggy man on the entranceway to each town. And that'll take you to just outside the town. But you can't fast travel outside of the town from anywhere on the map. So you have to find your way to a town before you can travel to another part of the continent, fast travel, but that won't necessarily put you where you want to go. Let's say that there's a dungeon that you want to go into that would take a minute to walk across that map to find in another continent. You have to run for a minute to your town in the main continent, then transfer to the other city, then run. So you're still taking 2 minutes. You might save a couple more, but it would have been nice if there was a spell or something to let you do that. There is items, teleport stones that let you go to the entranceway of a dungeon, but it would have been nice if there was a spell that let you just, or an item that once you're outside of a dungeon that would just auto return you to the nearest town. So that's just something that was a bit nitpicky for me. It would have shaved off a bit of time, because you get powerful enough if you're playing on normal or easy that you don't really need to fight after a certain point until you hit the certain bosses. So that would have been something that I would have preferred, but it does give it that old school flair. There is a lot of fetch quests for the side quests. You don't have to do really any of them. But it does add a fair bit, and it does save you a lot of money in that you can get some cool weapons and accessories. And if you do a couple of the side missions, you can get a couple extra job classes that are not required to beat the game, but required if you want the proper true ending. Now, I'm not going to go into spoilers, major story spoilers, but I will say if you've played the original Bravely game, at the end of the game, there was the big twist, and this is a spoiler for the original game. The fairy that you were with the whole time ended up being evil and caused a I guess, time loop that you were stuck in that you as a player could see happening, but the characters didn't necessarily realize it. And slowly you realized you were in a Groundhog Day situation where you were being manipulated by the fairy the whole time. And then you eventually, if you do everything proper in that, you can get the true ending by killing the fairy and yada, 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 the dark one, and save the world. Some people had problems with that. I liked the whole Groundhog Day concept because I hadn't seen it done in a game before. How they sort of took conventions and twisted it on its head. In this game, there is a bit of that. The game is very competent. It's like the best late 90s style JRPG that isn't a huge cinematic game. It's like that big amalgamation of everything you might have liked from that era. And then they throw it a little bit on its head at the end. You beat the game, and you get a bad ending, or a not-so-happy ending. That's the standard. It even plays the full credits, and you're like, oh, and then you save, and then it lets you back in, and you get the choice of, it's like, you get put back where you beat the game, and you can just choose to leave, and it's like, are you sure you want to leave? It's like, yeah, we got to find another way to do this, because it reveals to you that ending, when you load it up, if you try to leave, the characters go, they were reading from a book, and they go, whoa, was that a vision of our future? We got to find another way to do this. And that carries on for another sort of ending that's not quite as good, but is a little better. And then I was stuck for about an hour running around going, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? And I'll say this, they did something very creative when it comes to how you end up moving on to the final secret chapter, because the book is told through multiple chapters. It's told through multiple chapters, like you're reading from a book, the book of which itself is key and central to the plot, which you don't 100% see. You see it when you're playing the game at first, but it becomes more essential later on. And when you finally move to that last chapter, which was really clever how they did it, because I didn't notice it at first, and I just went, oh, you have to select an option that you would never have selected before or seen before. And it's just sort of there, like innocuous, and you don't even really notice it. Once you do that, it tells you should save, because once you move into this last chapter, it's going to change some things. You do that, and when you fight the true boss ending, when you're in that fight, it completely has a game-breaking moment where it changes the UI of the game and manipulates it in strange ways. I'll say this, like, in the game, you have brave points that you can accrue from defending, is braving, and that lets you accrue points to do multiple attacks at one turn. And pressing it will go brave, and the screen will sort of flash. Well, when you do it in this one battle, and it's not a story spoiler, something is happening, and it gives you the option to brave. So when you click brave, the music goes to it. It actually goes to the beat of the brave, sort of like Rez would have done. And when you keep doing it, eventually the screen starts manipulating and changing and warping and moving to your ability to brave. And you do it a bunch of times, it changes the whole interface, which was really clever. And then in beating that boss, you get a different ending, and you're able to then do some challenge battles that are super hard. That I did all of them, but they were super hard. Even when I dropped it down to easy to try them later on when I kept dying. But eventually I prevailed, and doing that lets you do another super secret boss that has nothing to do with the plot necessarily, but is interesting. And in the back of my head, I thought, maybe there's something here. But you interact with something that seems innocuous, and then it's very Dragon Age-y in that it seems like something that's not really important, but you interact with it, and then you end up summoning a super difficult boss that has 3 times the HP of the hardest boss of the game. And I can get that down to about 20% and I die, and I'm at level 70. So I'm assuming if I get to level 90 and then do max everything, I can probably do it. Very well put together. I don't want to ramble too much more about this. The music is absolutely fantastic. The game has a great audio design. The voice acting is pretty much top-notch. I was worried about it from the original trailers, but ultimately I had a pretty good time with it. Now, visually, it's firmly in the Switch realm of what can be done. There's no stuttering. There's no hiccuping. It seems to be a consistent frame rate. Very well put together. Again, about 50 hours or so of gameplay. It is a fantastic exclusive RPG on the Nintendo Switch, and if you're a fan of JRPGs, you will not want to miss this one.
The Prime Minister of Sweden visited Washington today, and my tiny little nipples went to France.
Gossip, rumors, panic in the streets. We're lucky.
This Week in Geek News.
All right, well, welcome back here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, joined with Alex, producer. All right, our first story is going to come courtesy of The Hollywood Reporter, and Disney Plus users face technical difficulties streaming the WandaVision finale. The problems mostly affected the West Coast. In an interview, star Elizabeth Olsen alluded to a shocking guest appearance, which made fans even more ravenous to be among the first to view the episode. Disney Plus crashed for some users during the early morning hours Friday as throngs of fans attempted to watch the WandaVision season finale. Screenshots from Irked fan posted to social media showed their screens with a message reading, "We're sorry, but we cannot play the video you requested. Please try again. If the problem persists, contact Disney Plus. Support error code 39. Down Detector, a site that tracks outages at major websites and streaming platforms, reported a huge spike in user-generated reports of Disney Plus experiencing technical problems just after midnight Pacific time. Down Detector tracked most of the problems for users located on the West Coast. The finale of the finale of the Marvel Studios show starring Elizabeth Olsen, Paul Bettany, and Catherine Hahn became a hot commodity after Olsen, in an interview, alluded to an upcoming shocking guest appearance. Ever since, fans have been debating who the character could be, with many going back to comic storylines to prove their ventured guesses. Friday's finale marked the second time that WandaVision crashed Disney Plus, with nearly 95 million subscribers around the world. Many fans have made it a point to stream the show the moment the new episode drops at midnight Pacific time. The 9-episode first season was a critical and fan success. It is not clear at the moment if the show will return. Olsen dropped by The Tonight Show on Wednesday and told host Jimmy Fallon the finale would answer a lot of questions viewers have been left from previous episodes. She also noted she is currently working on the upcoming Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. The Sam directing installment is due in theaters March 25th, 2022. I did not experience this error. Because of me being sick. Yeah, we're East Coast. I was up anyway, because getting up and being sick the last week or so, I'm like, well, it's 3:00. I'll just get up anyway, watch it, and go back to sleep. And I did, and I'm pretty pleased with what I saw. Didn't get exactly what I thought I'd get.
I'm watching as soon as we finish watching.
No.
Or talking.
No spoilers. I'll say that I got more than what I wanted, not exactly what I thought I'd get. Basically, it's like, how I would describe it is this. You know how sometimes you go to, this is probably, I think they have these in the States, but if you go to Harvey's, for example, and you get a French fries, and sometimes you get an onion ring in with your French fries, but that's what I got. I got the French fries that I wanted.
So what you did is you didn't order frings, but you got a little extra.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, that's fascinating. I like that. That opens up the possibility, and it wasn't what everybody was expecting.
And I'm happy with without knowing
cool.
What's happening yet. I'm happy with. I love speculating. I love this. What I don't like is when I see people complain that it didn't turn out the way they wanted. It's like, well, no. Part of the fun is the speculation. Just be happy that you're getting a good, well-made property.
Yeah, and this was a show a lot of people wrote off because the concept sounded so goofy, but over the last 9 episodes, you see why it is this way. And even my next door neighbor, Liam, who didn't much care for the first 2 episodes, he binged it the other day and was like, okay, this was really good television. And it's an interesting character piece because you got more of Wanda Maximoff in like 9 hours than you did with a few minutes in Infinity War, Civil War, and like Age of Ultron. You actually got a fully developed character piece. I'm fine with that. If this is what Marvel television can be, then I think we're in for a real treat with Falcon.
What this shows is Bettany for a long time had been sort of written off. Remember, he had a promising early career, and then it sort of fell off. And what was he doing? Like, what was that romantic comedies with like the
Knight's Tale or something,
movie and all this terrible shit nobody cares about.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had this sort of career renaissance where like people thought his career was kind of over. He thought it was, and then he was cast as Jarvis just as a voice, and then so on and so forth. What they show here is how much range he has. And again, I haven't seen the final episode, but I would be surprised if he doesn't get up for an Emmy. I don't know for dramatic performance, which he should get, but I think for comedy this year.
Best support.
Yeah, like because he's it's weird. It's WandaVision, as both of them, but he really is a supporting character in his own show because of the circumstances of the plot. But fantastic range, way better than I think most people expected from him, and I think got more people to think of him as a fully realized three-dimensional character, more so than most of the other Marvel characters. So,
and like I said, there's enough in the WandaVision finale that I'm excited for the possibilities.
I don't know
happen.
Again, no spoilers, but I do know that it didn't hit that 1 hour mark that they were saying it was going to take. So I'm wondering if when they officially announced how many hours it was, I think we might have misinterpreted it as full feature, like full runtime hours, because you know how Hollywood actually, an hour to them is 45 minutes. So they may be using old terminology from when they used to have commercials, because if you add commercials to these episodes, they end up being an hour long. So that might be why it wasn't as long as they said, because when somebody says it's going to be over an hour, well, that to us means over 60 minutes, but in Hollywood, over an hour means over 44. So we'll see. I'm still going to enjoy watching it, but I could see how this would have crashed it. Like, this was right now, like The Mandalorian is big, but this has wider general appeal than Star Wars even has in the current era. I think that there was so much damage done to the Star Wars franchise with the movies that there are some people that might have been turned off from watching The Mandalorian in the first place. But the Marvel movies have been the biggest thing for the last 10 years. So it makes sense that this would be what crashes it. This is the closest we're getting to water cooler Game of Thrones talk since Game of Thrones ended.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then Loki, Hawkeye later this year, Miss Marvel.
Falcon and Winter Soldier was the one I was looking least forward to. I thought they were the most bland of the characters. And then I see more and more trailers, and I'm like, they're looking better.
Loki's the one I'm the least looking for.
Loki, when I see Loki's
the one I don't know.
Loki, to me, if they're doing it right, I'm like, holy shit, is this X-Files meets like Quantum Leap? Or Sliders. That's kind of the feel it's giving me. But yeah, so we'll see how that goes with a bit of I don't know, something about casting Owen Wilson in a serious role is odd and off-putting. So it will be interesting to see.
I'm looking forward to seeing Hawkeye a lot this year because I really like Haley Steinfeld. I love the character of Hawkeye. So I'm curious to see how they'll transition him out of being an active Avenger to training the next generation of young Avengers.
A very underrated actor. I feel like the roles they've given him for this have been kind of, they haven't let him show his range. So maybe this will be a Paul Bettany sort of situation where he gets to really play free again.
So that's going to do it for that story. Once again, if you want to see Falcon and Winter Soldier, that premieres on March 19th on
That's so
Disney
close.
Plus. Okay, this next 2 weeks, this next story comes courtesy of mobilesyrup.com and mostly affects us up here in Canada, although if you're in the States, this also has now taken effect for you, but not as good for us, or not as good for us as it is for you. CBS All Access is now called Paramount Plus in Canada. It's unclear if original TV series based on Flashdance, The Italian Job, and more are coming to the platform in Canada. If you are hoping Paramount Plus will make its way to Canada, you're about to be disappointed and a little more than confused. According to the Canadian press, in Canada, CBS All Access will be renamed Paramount Plus as of Thursday, March 4th, which just recently passed. The publication says a representative for Viacom CBS stated the U.S. audiences will get access to various Paramount films and TV series on the platform from brands like Nickelodeon, BET, MTV, Showtime, Comedy Central, and more content that won't make its way to Canada. North of the border, only the name and platform's logo will change. That said, Canadian press reported that let me see. Sorry, I lost my place. North of the U.S. border, only the name and logo platform will change. That said, the Canadian press reporting also mentions that could change in the future, and programming announcements are expected at an undetermined future date. In the U.S., Paramount is set to get an original series based on notable films from the company, including Flashdance, The Italian Job, and Fatal Attraction. It remains unclear if those series will also make their way to the Canadian version of the service at some point. Even major Viacom TV shows like Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard won't be available on the service, as they're available on Bell Media's Crave streaming platform. CBS is All Access available on all major platforms such as, iOS and all that shit. Now, it's weird because I actually got to thinking about this. All the stuff is split amongst all the different platforms. Like if you want to get Nickelodeon, for example, half of that stuff is on YTV. Half of that stuff is through a standalone channel on Amazon. And then some of it's available on Crave, because Canada has such a fractured streaming.
Because Rogers and Bell own everything streaming in Canada, and they've been piecemealing individual parts, and whatever isn't picked up by those two, Netflix and Amazon picks up.
Yeah, and it's such a disappointment because I figured we would have got something.
No Star Trek
when the thing happened. Now, no Star Trek. Now, I've been signed up for CBS / Paramount Plus for a few months now because my wife really likes to watch Survivor. I signed up for the Twilight Zone and some other stuff. It makes no sense why we couldn't get the original series, yet we're getting some original series that are already on there.
There are a total of, I think, 6 or 8 original series on there, and 90% of them are not worth watching. They're the ones, they're literally the shows that none of the Canadian networks wanted to pay for. So why, if none of them wanted to pay for it, then what good are they?
Yeah, I don't know. I remember years ago, I used to use a VPN service, and I used to have Hulu. Hulu was ridiculously worth it. Now in Canada, for example, now through Disney Plus, we now get access to Stars, which is what you guys get in the States too. And that opened up the entire Fox library, and that increases the price of Disney Plus by $4 or $5, whatever, who cares? But we're grandfathered in.
66% of what Hulu is. It has all of the Disney-owned properties that were already on there, which they had before. That was their partnership before they made their own app, obviously. It also has all of the Fox properties, right? But 33% or nearly 40% of the content was created by Sony. We're not getting any of that. In fact, Sony has no licensing deal for any service in Canada since they shut down Crackle, their own service. So it's stupid.
Which makes no sense.
Why do they not have? Why isn't it on PlayStation?
Yeah,
and then they can't.
Dumb.
They shut down their own PlayStation Plus or PlayStation purchase. They have literally, Sony has no venture in Canada. It's just a per picture basis. So you might see something on Netflix, but they'll buy per movie. So let's say the James Bond library is with Sony, right? So that would be them going, okay, well, let's say you went to Netflix and they're like, oh, look, Goldfinger's on here. But why is Dr. No on Amazon? Because they sell each property individually. It's so stupid.
That's so dumb.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if you want to put money on the table, I would create your own streaming platform, and I think people will pay it. The fact that Canada doesn't get NBC Peacock either, I think, is another big problem.
Surprising. I believe that there's a deal in place. I forget which streaming platform it is for that, because NBC Universal, I think it's Showcase, cable channels have first dibs for that in Canada. And then Crave maybe, but probably not. And not to mention that the CBS shows that are part of the Crave deal are 720p stereo or maybe surround, barely. No HDR, no 4K, not even 1080p. Yet their counterparts in the States are fully there. And they've been saying that they're looking into 4K streaming for Crave for 4 years now, and they don't even have 1080p properly for most of the streams. So, that is literally the only purely Canadian one in town that is signing up all these things. We used to have Show Me, which was the rival from Rogers. And when that closed, there was no chance that Bell was going to invest anything in their own platform, because they don't have to, because they're the only game in town.
And Show Me, for what it was, had a wonderful selection, and it was free.
It was free. Yeah, it was
you
free.
had so many good older
it
movies.
It was free,
on there.
ad supported, and then if you wanted to pay, you paid your $6.99 or $7.99, and it made it ad free 1080p surround. And that was like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and that was at the same time that Crave was out, and Crave was woefully behind. And then Crave introduced surround sound like 4 years ago on only new properties, and they said they were going to roll it out for all the back catalog, and they never did. And then they got the HBO deal. If you want to watch HBO, only way to watch it in Canada streaming wise is through them, and it's 720p or 1080p on a few select movies, and then stereo on almost everything. It's like watching a 480p YouTube stream in the quality for HBO. It's unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
So like this was disappointing because I thought, oh, when CBS does this and converts up here, maybe we'll start getting proper surround. Nope. Even the Canadian app for that is only 1080p stereo. Yet in the States, Paramount Plus is 4K HDR surround, just like Amazon or anybody else that's modern. It's so bad how we're basically connected to the States, and we're with a better internet infrastructure, and yet we get the worst quality service. So that pisses me off. I'll tell you that right now.
It's frustrating. So moving on to our next story. This one comes courtesy of comingsoon.net. The Simpsons has been renewed for 2 more seasons at Fox. Fox has officially renewed their long-running animated series, The Simpsons, for 2 more seasons. The renewal comes after the series recently made changes within the voice cast. It has been confirmed that Harry Shearer will no longer be voicing the character of Dr. Julius Hibbert, a black doctor that Shearer has been voicing for over 30 years now. Because of this, Kevin Michael Richardson, the guy who played Shredder on the 2012 Ninja Turtle series, that's where I know him from, has stepped up to replace Shearer as the voice of Julius. The iconic series is currently airing its 32nd season and is set to return this Sunday with a brand new episode titled Yokel Hero. It is a sincere pleasure to announce that season 33 and 34 pickups for The Simpsons, Fox Entertainment CEO Charlie Collar said in a statement via Collider, where we keep hoping that eventually they'll get it right. Profound respect for and congratulations to Matt, Jim, Al, and many other wonderful partners working really hard to finally elevate the Tracy Ullman show. As they say, practice makes perfect.
You know what? Like I see it now. I understand why they're doing this, but at the same time, it's like this. Their caricatures, their characters that they create are mostly harmless. So I get why I've seen backlash back and forth between it, but I guess their solution is just let's get one of the other Fox regulars, Kevin Michael Richardson's on. If there's a voice acting job needed on Fox, he's there. So I get it, and I'm like, okay, good choice, because he can do a few voices, but it will be noticeable because he has a distinct voice. So I mean, I don't think they're going to lose viewers over this. They're not going to gain any. Like this.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, The Simpsons at this point, it's like the 6 o'clock news. You just expect it to always be there. When does the series come to its natural conclusion?
I have a question too. This was a preemptive thing. I don't think this was like a poo where they did get complaints. Like there were complaints, but also the question of complaints was it the Indian community that was upset with him? Every article that I saw was that it was presumptively offended. It's like, I think this is offensive to Indian groups of people, and it was white people saying it. And it's like, no, I don't. Let's hear from the Indian groups. Are the Indian groups upset with it? Like in people in India that watch it, because it is a worldwide phenomenon show. You would think that we would have heard by now that there was some major backlash, but there wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, and that. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody understands it was in good fun.
It was.
If it is a stereotype, I don't think it was harmful.
No, and not to mention it was
meant to be funny.
It was shown that Apu was a great family man, worked hard, yada yada. He's one of the best people, in quotes, people in the Simpsons in Springfield. The most genuine, nice, good people in Springfield. And they have their flaws. Everybody has their flaws in the show, but he was never played up like there would be a cultural joke. There was never a racist joke where he was the butt of the joke in 600 episodes that was truly offensive. The only offense that was taken was, well, if you're an actor, you can't portray somebody that's not your race. And it's like, isn't that what acting is? I understand, like I get the idea was they're like, oh, it's a boys club and it's only white guys that were hired to play all these roles back in the 80s, and it's like, okay, but was this offensive? Was it truly offensive? So, but I could see how Apu might be with the accent, but Hibbert, does anybody care?
No, he's just a doctor. As far as I'm concerned.
What about him? What about the presentation of him was racially offensive? Because it was portrayed by a white guy.
I mean, I always thought he was just a hardworking country black doctor.
And it didn't,
you know what I mean?
Did you ever put any thought as to who was voicing it or why? No.
No.
So
it was just.
That being said, I can understand how if there were people that are upset with it, I understand that. Great. But I didn't hear anything.
I just want the best performance. This
feels like it was preventative to pre-appease an audience of people that are never going to be appeased by them anyway at this point. Like they're trying to appease the people that are under 25 that don't watch the show anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange. I mean, obviously, if I can get representation in the role, great. If you can't, then go with the best performance. Do what you can.
Well, and again,
I don't know. I haven't watched The Simpsons.
This was not an offensive stereotype. Like, would the argument be made now that you can't Cletus? This sounds like there's going to be a yokel episode, right? Are you saying now that you can't voice Cletus unless you're also from the Appalachians? So
yeah, I mean, at some point there has to be a real conversation.
Exactly, and don't take what we're saying as like, rah. It's not that. It's. I see what they did. I understand what they did. It's going to be weird. it's going to be weird hearing the voice be that different when you've heard a certain voice a certain way for literally my entire life.
30 years.
There is not a time where I remember The Simpsons came out a year after I was born. There's not a time where I remember The Simpsons not being on. So it's going to be weird. Yeah. And also, I've also thought it was weird that we weren't seeing Apu that often because he was one of my favorite characters. Just because of his family. Just anytime they did a focused episode on him, I loved it. And Hibbert had some pretty funny moments too. I would say my personal favorite, before we move on, is with Hugo, the evil twin from the Halloween special. Do you remember when he tells Hugo to come look at yourself in a mirror, right? And it's just a picture frame, and he looks through and he sees Hibbert's face, and Hibbert just punches through the picture frame, knocks Hugo out. It's that kind of crap. That's what I loved.
All right, so moving on to our last story this week. This one comes courtesy of AnimeNewsNetwork.com. The first day of the Katakawa Light Novel Expo event announced on Saturday that Satoshi Wagahara's The Devil's a Part-Timer light novel series will have a second anime season. The main cast is returning. Now, this is the Japanese cast. I would presume the English cast will follow.
I saw this when I was trimming through our notes for this, and I went, yes! I've been waiting, almost 10 years for this?
Yeah, because this is something you showed me, I think it was last summer or the summer before last. And the article goes on to say the Yen Press publishes both the original light novels and Akio Higuragi's manga adaptation, and it describes the story, if you people don't know what this is. After being soundly thrashed by the hero Emilia, the Devil King and his general beat a hasty retreat to a parallel universe, only to land plop in the middle of a bustling modern-day Tokyo, lacking the magic necessary to return home. The two are forced to assume human identities and live average human lives until they can find a better solution. And to make ends meet, Satan finds gainful employment at a nearby fast food joint, while his devilish mindset on working up the management food chain. What will become of his thirst for
It's basically, what if the devil, our vision of
worked at
what
McDonald's?
if the medieval vision of the devil and from a sort of medieval world passed through a parallel dimension into our world, and then decided that the way to take over our world into a mass power while he regains his magical strength is to take over McDonald's. And to do that, it's not evil ways. His solution was, well, I see the only way to move up is to be a good employee. So I'm going to be the best person I can possibly be so that I get enough power to enslave every human on this planet. So in turn, I will be the best human possible, the absolute most courteous, nice, friendly, helpful person on the planet, all for the sole purpose of crushing you under my feet when I become leader again. And hilarity
it
ensues.
was so weird. Yeah, you showed this to me. You showed me the dub of this on Netflix a couple summers ago, and I was genuinely surprised how good
for
it
a
was.
silly concept.
Like, I haven't watched an anime. Yeah, like this is an anime series. I think you and I finished
we
it one
binged
day.
it. We watched it till like 4 a.m.
Yeah, I think it's less than 20 episodes. I think it's less than 15, honestly. But it was really good, really well performed. It's heartfelt. It's funny. And I'm glad that it's getting a second season finally. So hopefully when it eventually gets dubbed by Funimation or Netflix or whoever does it, I hope we'll get a simulcast dub of it.
Yeah,
that's a thing that
it was 13
episodes
and 2013 when it came out. So I saw it, I think, in 2014. But yeah, it was, again, very simple. It's got the little bit of the, it's not like the harem animes, but it's got like that little samples of bits and pieces of what you like from anime tropes out there. I just love the idea of it's a guy. He's like, the devil's like, the best way to take over the world is to become a corporate leader by working at McDonald's. Oh yeah, he works
thus proving hard work.
Yeah, he works at McDonald's, which again, hilarious for the time. Now there's been more anime that are sort of like that since then, but the dub was very well handled. So hopefully they can get the same team back or somebody similar back.
Yeah, so be on the lookout for that, hopefully sometime soon. All right, guys, that's going to take us to our next review, which will be coming from myself. And we're going to take a look at a title coming just from Paramount Home Entertainment. This is the John Hughes 5 movie collection on Blu-ray and digital. We'll be back, guys, right after this with our weird news segment that you look forward to each and every week. We'll be back, guys, right after this, only on ThisWeekInGeek.net. Hey guys, this is Mike the Birdman here, and I'm here to talk about the latest release coming to us from Paramount Home Entertainment, and I'm talking about the John Hughes 5 movie collection on Blu-ray and digital. So this 5 movie collection includes Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Pretty in Pink, She's Having a Baby, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and Some Kind of Wonderful, which I'm pretty sure this is the first time you can get Some Kind of Wonderful on Blu-ray. So obviously you're getting these 5 wonderful movies on Blu-ray, but you're also getting a variety of special features for each release, some more so than others. She's Having a Baby, I think, only has a couple of ones on there, so nothing too spectacular. Most of everything else has like behind the scenes interviews, trailers, stuff like that. So it's a pretty nice package for what you're paying. On Amazon.ca right now, you can get it for about $22.99, and that's a fantastic value because John Hughes is one of those directors that tends to identify with the 80s and 90s and kind of that teen comedy growing up, basically set the template for the dramedy that a lot of people have tried to emulate over the years to varying degrees of success. Now, some of these movies I've never seen before. I've actually never seen She's Having a Baby, and I've never seen Some Kind of Wonderful. Heard about them, but I've never seen them. I mean, everybody's seen Ferris Bueller, Pretty in Pink, and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. So it was kind of nice to see these movies for the first time, and especially since I just spent some time in the hospital, it was nice to be able to have a laugh, have a look at a different time in filmmaking, because John Hughes movies always have a very distinctive look, a very distinctive feel to them as well. So I would ultimately say that being able to have these movies at such an affordable price, especially with all the extras, and also having the benefit of a digital copy of them as well, is a fantastic value right now from Paramount Home Entertainment. So if you want to pick up the John Hughes 5 movie collection, I don't think you're going to go wrong with it. The price is right. You're getting a fantastic selection of movies. You're going to have a laugh. You're going to have some feels. And you're going to get some really neat behind-the-scenes stuff that you may never have seen before. So once again, from Paramount Home Entertainment, that's the John Hughes 5 movie collection on Blu-ray and digital from Paramount Home Entertainment.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
All right, guys. Well, welcome back to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, joined by my co-host, Alex the producer. Well, let's talk about the strange and unusual things that happened around the planet and this plane of existence this past week. This is the weird news. The asteroid Apophis, not the System Lord from the Stargate franchise. No, this is a giant, big fucking space rock, is going to be swinging by by this weekend to come say hello, and it's coming by to taunt us. An asteroid with a small chance of hitting Earth in the year 2068 will swing past our planet in the coming days, providing a rare opportunity for astronomers to observe this potentially hazardous object. For its current sojourn around the Sun, asteroid 99942 Apophis will make its closest approach to Earth on March 6, 2021, during which time it will come within 10.5 million miles or 16.9 million kilometers of our planet, according to a bulletin put out by astronomers at the Goldstone Solar System radar. That's a reasonably big distance, about 44 times the distance to the Moon, so there's no need to worry. Apophis won't be visible to the unaided eye, but the closest approach is of interest to radar astronomers who will be monitoring the large asteroid as it zips past Earth. This will be our last opportunity to study the potentially hazardous object before an even closer approach several years from now on Friday, April 13th, 2029. Apophis will come within 19,000 miles or 31,000 kilometers of Earth, and that's about 1/10 the distance of the Earth to the Moon, during which time it will be visible to the unaided eye. Astronomers say there's no chance that Apophis will smash into our planet in 2029, nor in 2036 when the asteroid is scheduled to make yet another close approach, but the same cannot be said for the 2068 encounter. Apophis, discovered back in June 2004, it is currently ranked third on NASA's list of potentially hazardous near-Earth objects, or NEOs. Estimates of a potential collision in 2068 vary, ranging from a 1 in 150,000 chance to a 1 in 100 and 530,000 chance. These are exceptionally slim odds, but slim is not the same as zero. Indeed, a collision with this 1,011-foot wide asteroid, or 350 meters, would be devastating. Apophis, which is the width of 3 football fields, would unleash the equivalent of 1,150 megatons of TNT. For scale, imagine 3,800 Hiroshima-like atomic bombs going off at the same time. Yeah, so this could suck. Such an event would result in both local and global devastation, including the onset of an impact winter. Collisions of this magnitude are rare, but they are expected to happen once about every 80,000 years. By comparison, asteroids similar in size to the one that caused the extinction of all non-avian dinosaurs are expected about once every 250 to 730 million years, known as the Chicxulub impactor. The dino-killing asteroid measured over 10 miles or 16 kilometers wide, and it crashed into the Yucatan Peninsula approximately 66 million years ago. Which brings us back to Apophis and its upcoming close approach. Astronomers have been preparing for the upcoming close encounter, and their efforts are being coordinated through the 99942 Apophis 2021 observing campaign organized by the International Asteroid Warning Network, or IAWN. Astronomers at NASA's Goldstone Deep Space Communication Complex in California will be watching, as will a group at Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia. Regrettably, this close approach would have been a perfect opportunity for the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, but their famous radar dish collapsed late last year, if you happen to remember that story. Radar observations of Apophis in the coming days should improve knowledge of the spin state and shape of the object, according to the Goldstone Observatory. Refined measurements will expose potential changes to the asteroid when it flies by in 2029. Earth's gravitational tug is expected to alter the asteroid and its trajectory in various ways, and even enable prediction of the orientation of the asteroid after the 2029 encounter, per Goldstone. The primary objective of the 2021 campaign is to reduce the uncertainties in the orbit, spin state, and 3D shape of the object. This latest flyby, but the 2029 approach will be the real deal. Scientists and engineers are already planning for this rare opportunity, including potential missions to park spacecraft near the asteroid and send probes to the surface. We'll learn about Apophis and asteroids in general from these missions, but we'll also get a better sense of the risk posed by the 2068 encounter. 1 in 150,000. I don't like those odds.
Yeah.
I much like the odds of 1 in 500,000, but that's not zero. Mind you, how old would we be by then? 2068.
Well, I would be.
Let's find out. So 2068.
I'll be 81. You'll be.
I'll be 87.
Yeah. Well,
so I don't care
if we make it to that point.
Yeah, if we make it to that point,
through whether means of our own demise from poor choices or through whatever hellscape we're going to be in politically, environmentally by then.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we aren't killed by robots, the Terminator, time travel, or God knows what else, I'm sure something terrible will happen long before
Nobody
then,
suspects the
when
butterfly.
we're, or the Mad Max future where they're going to tie me to the front of a truck. So yeah, that'll be good
What are you
times.
saying? You'd be
So
that
this
little
next-
guy screaming. You'd be on the shoulder or whatever. We'll find some giant Andre the Giant mutant to hold you up, and you can just scream at people.
Yes. Nobody gets beyond Thunderdome. All right, so this next story comes courtesy of the independent.co.uk. A dinosaur found in Argentina could be the oldest titanosaur ever discovered. An enormous dinosaur unearthed in Argentina could be the oldest titanosaur ever discovered, scientists say. Researchers at the country's National Scientific Council believe that the fossilized titanosaur roamed what is once Pannonia 140 million years ago at the start of the Cretaceous period. This new analysis would mean the titanosaur, a diverse group of long-necked plant-eating dinosaurs, lived longer ago than previously thought. The main importance of this fossil, apart from it being a new species of titanosaur, is that this is the oldest recorded for this group worldwide, says Pablo Guiana of the National Scientific and Technical Research Council. He added that 140 million-year-old fossils are really scarce. This specimen, discovered 7 years ago in Niquin province in northwest Patagonia, has been renamed, I can't pronounce this name,
Don't bother.
after paleontologists. Don't bother. It looks like it's pronounced Ninja Titan Zepatai.
I'm pretty sure.
Literally, it says ninja.
Now, my question before you go any further is, are we sure we didn't just find the resting place of was Titanus? Is that the giant Zord platform?
Dinosaur. Yes.
And they used didn't they?
That was the shuttle.
Didn't they use him to fire a bunch of crazy spiral lasers at that floating head monster that was freed by that was floating in the sky, and it was like like a floating head thing, and then they fired a bunch of laser beams at it when Rita was trying to take over the world?
Yes, it was the Titanus, which was the shuttle Zord, which was the Brachiosaur.
Fucking awesome.
And then there was Tor,
like,
the shuttle
fire
Zord.
everything, and it's like and it fired like a million different laser beams and shapes and stuff in all different directions and killed every single human plane in the sky. That amount of firepower. But they did kill a giant detached head space wizard witch, so that was worth it. And I'm assuming that what was the other one you called there? The ninja. I'm pretty sure. Are you sure that's not just Ninjor's robot or something? Everything here.
Actually, it's funny. I'm actually kind of reading the story a little bit further, and it says the dinosaur was named after paleontologist Sebastian L. Ninja Estatigua.
That is the coolest
and
name
technician
ever.
Rodrigo. Yeah, the fact that they call you El Ninja.
No, what's your name? What's
paleontologist
thing?
thing?
Dr. Ninja. That's like what a 5-year-old says. What are you gonna be when you grow up? A Dr. Ninja? What does that mean? I can throw ninja stars at people and then I can heal them or not.
I could cure cancer and have a sword.
I'm gonna use my medicine to revive you to get the results I want, and then when I hear what you have to say, I'll kill you 3 times again, and then disappear like the ninja doctor that I am.
As well as being the oldest dinosaur, as well as being the oldest titanosaur ever discovered, it is also believed to be the largest. Although the fossil is incomplete, its pelvic bone and vertebrae suggest that the Ninja Titan Zapata was around 20 meters long. Its close relative, the Andosaurus, grew to be 18 meters long.
Meters.
The largest animal to ever existed
50 feet long.
Yeah, the largest animal to ever have existed remains the blue whale, however, which can grow up to be 33.5 meters long. That's huge. The titanosaurs were still roaming the earth when the dinosaurs became extinct at the end of the Cretaceous period around 65 million years ago. The scale of these
meters
creatures.
is 3 point whatever feet. So that's like it was a 75-foot animal, and the blue whales can be anywhere up to about 100 feet, which is crazy.
Yeah. Like, just the pure size of these creatures. Like, if ever there wasn't the ability to go back in time, not to interact with anything, but just to observe, to see some of these creatures walking around would blow
especially
your
when
mind.
that if it's like, that kind of species, it means it was very likely an herbivore.
Yes, they did say this was a plant
so
species.
Think about this. Think about
that fed on
how
plants.
many plants did it have to eat to maintain its bulk?
Yeah, like its energy, it had to constantly be moving.
This is at a time when they're probably, the reason they went extinct was there wouldn't have been enough plant life on Earth to maintain millions of those things. Right? Like, the only reason blue whales are able to survive is because the Earth is vast majority of it is ocean. And because of that, there's much more voluminous area for it to eat protein than like on Earth. Like, it's crazy to me. It's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. So our next story comes courtesy of doityourselfphotography.net. Thanks to Alex. A reporter has been robbed of camera at gunpoint while filming a piece about robberies. It's a kind of cruel irony you see in a scene from a movie or TV series. Something Don Ford, a reporter for KPX5 News, was shooting a story on the rise of robberies in San Francisco's Twin Peaks neighborhood since certain roads were closed off due to the pandemic. These roads were previously led to tourist attractions, but local thieves' main targets no longer visiting the area. They've resorted to robbing people that live there instead. Ford was interviewing nearby homeowners about the robbers when a white luxury sedan vehicle pulled up outside one of the homes. 3 men stepped out, with a fourth remaining in the vehicle, and robbed Ford at gunpoint, proclaiming, "We're taking the camera." Ford and the subjects held up their hands and let the men take the camera equipment. While the whole thing took less than a minute, KPX reports Ford's thoughts. My whole thought at the moment was, be calm. Let's not get this guy excited. He's got the gun. I don't. So you take the camera. It's yours, buddy. The homeowners being interviewed when it happened appear to have had similar thoughts and stating, "I just looked and said, I'm not going to get shot today." San Francisco District 8 Representative Raphael Mendelman tweeted that the San Francisco Police Department are looking to find those responsible and recover the camera equipment, and the robbery was ridiculous and unacceptable, but not entirely unexpected. He did tweet earlier this afternoon, a reporter was robbed at gunpoint at Twin Peaks Boulevard and Burnett Avenue while interviewing a resident about car break-ins in the area. San Francisco police officers are looking to find those responsible and recover the camera. This incident is ridiculous and unacceptable, but not entirely unexpected in San Francisco in 2021. We need to adequately resource public safety agencies, adopt better strategies to stop repeat offenders, and make clear that San Francisco is not a place you can commit crimes and put people's lives at risk with impunity. Nobody was injured during the event, but everybody was understandably shaken. No arrests have yet been made. This isn't the first incident we've seen involving people being robbed at Twin Peaks over their camera gear. 71-year-old photographer Edward French was robbed and killed for his camera by a young man and woman in 2017. Yikes.
I can tell you right now something about San Francisco. My brother had to be there for work a few years back, and his wife went with him, sort of like a mini vacation. So he had to work while she took time to go do whatever. They decided to go walk to a Wendy's, and they ended up walking a few kilometers past where their hotel was. And they didn't realize as they were talking that it was getting a little seedier. And a guy yells at them from across the street, if you two guys are tourists, you might want to turn back. This isn't a nice part of town." And they're like, "What?" They're like, "We're just going to Wendy's." And he goes, "I'm going to go with you with my daughter." And the guy picked up his daughter, walked with him to the store. They picked up the Wendy's and walked back. And they're like, "What?" And they said, "Thanks, but what was up?" They said, "A lot of robberies happen here. You're too pretty and too white to walk around here." And it was a black gentleman that said that to them. And they're like, they thought it was weird. And then they had seen on the news about how many, this is even years ago, this sort of stuff was happening. So you see San Francisco in the movies and TV, and you think it's like pretty, like sunny, nice, and safe, and it's like there's a lot of dangerous ass neighborhoods.
Yeah, it's. I remember you telling me that story years ago, and it totally changed my perspective. Yeah. And I remember even years ago, I had friends of mine when I visited Dallas, for example, and it comes across to me as a fairly friendly city. No. When I went out with my friend Mickey there, we went into some neighborhoods we probably shouldn't have. And even when I went to Los Angeles, what you see on TV and what you experience is radically different. So, but I guess that could be said for anywhere. Like in Toronto, for example, you don't go near Jane and Finch.
Well, unless you live there. But yeah.
Yeah.
No, like New York City, my brother said was the closest to being like safer than they expected. But the only reason it was safer is he said there's a cop on every block. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you can't look left or right when he was living in Manhattan uptown, and then he had to work a little farther away. He goes, unless you go like pretty far out, he's like, you're never within or farther than about a minute walking or running distance from a cop. There's so many cops there. So I'm like, what? He goes, it's a weird thing. He goes, you feel safe, but you also feel oppressed. So I'm like, no, that's the mentality. He goes, he said the biggest epidemic is not so much that you were afraid of being robbed, you were afraid of being attacked by homeless people, because there's such a big bad mental health epidemic with the homeless there, and that same with LA now too. So it's like, oof, like it's not like what you see on TV. I'll tell you that. Mm-hmm. And it's like that. It's so like that here too, though. It's just not just on a different scale.
Mm-hmm. So our last story comes courtesy of Reason.com. Hard butter mystery riles Canada. Is it the cow feed, dairy regulations, or mass delusion? In Sad Sack Rat Trap, the fourth episode of the first season of HBO's brilliant series Succession, Connor Roy, a putative libertarian doofus who's the eldest son of grizzled media tycoon Logan Roy, volunteers to take his helm in planning an annual Family Foundation gala dinner. Planning the event is a big deal for Connor, played by Alan Ruck of the 1986 film Ferris Bueller's Day Off, because it may be the first time in his life that he's really done anything at all. After a casual conversation with his ailing father about his usurper's brother's plans for a hostile takeover, a look of sheer terror overtakes Connor's face as he first hears, then sees his stepmother fail in her attempt to spread a pat of butter onto a flaky, crumbling dinner roll. Aghast, Connor rushes away. Hey, Connor screams as he barges into the kitchen to berate the busy and bewildered cooks and waitstaff. The butter's too cold. The butter's all fucked. You're fuckwads. You fucked it up. There are dinner rolls ripping out there as we speak. The fictional scene is hilarious in no small part because it plays out on sometimes bizarre predilections of the super rich. Yet today, a whole nation is gripped by this almost very same problem. Canada's butter, it seems, is
I've
too
noticed
hard.
that.
Yes, I've heard about this on CBC
it
a week ago.
It can sit out on the shelf now for a day or two without getting soft.
It's so strange. So even at room temperature, some Canadians claim their butter now won't soften and spread. And like a nation of Connor Roys, Canadians are waving their hands and dropping F-bombs as they attempt to get to the bottom of the problem, which they've dubbed Buttergate.
My mom said one day, she goes, you took the butter out of the fridge for me, right? And I said, yeah. And she was getting more and more frustrated. She finally starts microwaving the butter. Why? And she does not really swear. But she goes, there's something fucking wrong with the butter. And I was like, what is it? Unsalted, salted? Is there something wrong? She goes, no. And she makes a reference, and she doesn't watch the show, but she sees the memes to Trailer Park Boys. She made the Bubbles reference. Something's fucky. and it slayed me. And that's when I saw the article, and I'm like, so we're not crazy.
Now, the first to point out the problem was Sylvian Charbois, a senior director at Dalhousie University's Agri-Food Analytics Lab, who tweeted about the hard butter in December. Then last month, popular Canadian food author and columnist Julie Van Rosendahl also suggested something is amiss with Canada's butter. She speculated the country's now unspreadably hard butter could be the result of tariff changes or changed farming practices. Those initial tweets, Van Rosenthal and many Canadians have pointed to a finger at palm oil supplements, which some farmers in Canada use to augment the diets of their dairy cows. To date, there's no proof that palming oil tells the whole story. Some Canadians are even pushing back on the very premise that there's a problem. They argue the country's butter is no harder nor less spreadable than it has been historically. Others are questioning why palm oil, the mass production of which, as I point out in my book, Biting the Hand That Feeds Us, is tied to deforestation and habitat loss for many critically endangered species, including Sumatran tigers, is even used to feed dairy cows. Though most of the reports suggest Buttergate may stem from farmers' use of palm oil as feed, interesting new report this week suggests regulations regulations and restrictions on the industry may be partly to blame for the hard butter. Just like the similar requirements in the United States, Canada's food regulations require that butter produced or sold in the country must contain at least 80% milk fat. Those sort of rules, generally known as the standards of identity, establish ingredients lists or recipes producers must follow if they wish to use the term such as butter. That has been deemed under the law, codified into regulations, or both. Standards of identity also typically differ from dictionary definitions of the same food. And then it basically goes on like this, just asking what's causing all this. One of the interesting quotes here is this one comes from Sherilyn Boss. She's the owner and operator of Rock Ridge Dairy Farms, located between Edmonton and Calgary. She says any number of factors, including regulations, could be to blame. Boss's dairy is organically certified and does not use palm oil in its feed. Boss says anything from seasonal changes in dairy feeding practices to butter churning process and temperatures could be to blame. Still, Boss isn't certain Buttergate is all it's cracked up to be. There's a million factors that affect butter softness. If you look at the records, even in the 1950s, this was a concern. It's not a new concept. I feel like someone was trying to stir things up. Now, I actually bought butter a couple weeks ago just because I really had a craving for just plain butter and bread, because I didn't use butter on my bread for like 20 years, up until the last year or two.
I was always a margarine guy because it was cheaper and it lasted longer in the fridge.
Yeah, same here.
But it does get watery in some cases. But I always used butter if I was baking or if a recipe called to use unsalted butter. My father prefers butter. My mother always did margarine, but my grandmother was always a butter person. So whenever I would visit, they had butter. And to me, I'd have to use less because it was just too strong, which is funny that butter would be strong in flavor. But like for somebody who used margarine so long, it is.
Yeah, it's strange. I've always just been a margarine guy, even growing up, because my parents were we were a poor family. I would use margarine on popcorn, and it wasn't until I went to the movie theater when I moved out on my own, I started having butter on popcorn that I noticed.
Same deal, like for us. But the margarine thing also, not like the small tubs. You know, remember? I don't know what brand it is. You know the big tub, the large one that has the red lid.
Yeah,
okay, that was a staple in our home because they'd use it for cooking, for everything. But the other reason was we would end up with a strong microwavable and freezable Tupperware container, not cheap flimsy. Like they came in a thick Tupperware. So for like $3 or $4, basically once a month, my parents would buy that tub. And then for the rest of the year until it broke, we would have Tupperware. So we never had to buy Tupperware. Like that is how poor families get by.
It's true. Or I remember, because I grew up in the 1980s and early 90s, it was always Country Crock margarine or whatever. The fucking brown one.
Oh,
so,
the brown.
I don't know.
The only other good, really cheap one. I don't think it's Imperial. It's Chefsman or Chef's Mate. The one that comes in the green container, the small green one.
Yeah,
it's like $1. It's one of the few that's made with vegetable oil, and it spreads more like real butter. But like, don't get fooled by I can't believe it's not butter. Those ones, they're all the same. But it's the cheapest, crappiest ones that sometimes are the closest. Anyway, true. Weird, yeah.
Anyway, strange, yeah. So anyway, if you're experiencing Buttergate, let me know.
This is a developing story that we will report on when we find out more. But
I'm sure it'll happen.
It made Reddit worldwide trending because people in Canada are like, "What the fuck's wrong with my butter?" Oh, and I guess what's also weird, but not really weird, is for us is we're trying out some new tech here for our recording. It turns out that with a service we're testing out, we can try different sound effects and stuff. Like here's ballpark, yay! And so it's very possible that we can have some funny sound effects pop up now and then when we're telling a funny story, like one of our favorites here. Oh, couldn't play. 1 second. This is what happens when you're testing things out. But here we go. Neat. Stop playing now. I'm done with you. But yes, so it's not really weird news, except that when we hear something really ridiculous or stupid, we might be able to interject with a funny little saying now and then. So we'll find out. And if it doesn't turn out, then ignore we said anything.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of the Weird News here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. We're going to take a small break, and Alex is going to thrill us with yet another review. We'll be back, guys, right after this as we close out the show and kind of give you an idea of what's going to be coming up. We'll be back right after this.
Alex here with just a quick review of Monster Jam Steel Titans 2. A review copy was provided from THQ Nordic. The game is developed by Rainbow, the same team behind the Monster Jam Steel Titans 1 that was released, I think, just about 2 years ago. We covered that at the time and thought it was fun but middle of the road, and it had some performance issues even on the enhanced systems like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X. Now, just to see how this improved on that version of the game, there's still frame rate issues, even playing on my PlayStation 5. I have the PS4 review copy, and you know how there's a backup or back compat version available for playback on the PlayStation 5. It usually clears up a lot of these sorts of frame rate issues. It might be down to fundamental coding of the game where it just will occasionally dip. It's overall still playable, and I think if you have a variable refresh rate TV or something to that extent, or maybe there's input lag, it might fix it. But it's ever so slightly noticeable. Nothing major. I'm assuming maybe on the base systems it might be a little more difficult to discern the frame rate, but as it stands, it performs pretty well. It's a graphical upgrade in, I'd say 10-20% or so off of the previous version of the game. They have moved it to be open world with a lot more to ride around, and that part is a lot more fun to just drive around and crush things, and it's overall controls a slight bit better to my memory comparing it to the original game. Audio is pretty standard. There is a pretty rough tutorial in that the opening tutorial is kind of grating if you've been somebody who's played any racing game in the past. It sort of treats you like this is your very first game. So I wish that was something you could sort of skip, or if there was a intermediate level that doesn't seem to hold your hand so much. I'm glad that it's there for those people that would probably use it if it's your first monster truck game or racing game in general. But it is something that I thought was like, oh, when is this going to be over? But once I got through that, I found that the meat of the game was a lot more enjoyable than the original version. So it is, not just an incremental upgrade for this version. It's actually pretty substantial, at least in my eyes. There are modes in the game that I didn't find quite as fun, but overall, it's a solid, straightforward game that seems to have enough polish, but maybe just needs a little patch here or there just to fix a couple frame rate hiccups here and there, but nothing major. Just if all I had to complain about was that it's just a slight stutter now and then it's not really a big deal at all. Now, it just doesn't seem to excel in anything. Nothing screams out like you must buy immediately unless you're already a fan of the series, or if you're a fan of monster trucks or racing games in general. As far as price point, this is where it becomes a little more interesting. It's retailing in Canada, depending on where you go, at about the $60 price point, whereas most modern games now are in Canada $80 to $90. So it's not quite that budget title $40 range, but it's also not full retail release price for like a AAA or big studio game. So it's cemented itself squarely in the middle, and that's sort of where I see it fitting in my enjoyment factor. It's worth the money at that price. Had it been something that was released at full $80 or $90, I would have said honestly avoid until it dropped in price. And had it been released at the $40 price point, it would have been probably an even better value, but I think people might overlook it thinking that, oh, it's a budget title, nobody's going to want to play that, maybe it's going to be crappy. So this is a good price point for it. If you've got an extra $60 to burn and you like racing and you like monster truck games, it's probably something you would want to check out.
All right, folks. Well, that has been the kind of show it has been here in the month of March. So hopefully you have had a chance to digest the WandaVision finale. I'm sure me and Alex will be talking about that. I know this week I'm supposed to be recording with JT from Saskatoon to talk about TWIG Sunday Funnies. We're going to be talking about the Dreamwave comics of Transformers that came out early in the 2000s, which were, I think, amazing. We're going to talk about those. I know Aaron and Alex should be doing a loose cannon. You should also be hearing a number of Earth versus Soups over the next little bit, because Aaron won't stop recording the damn thing.
He has found the passion hobby of his life now with his wife, recording, and we have so far 3 or 4 scheduled, and I believe
10 recorded.
I'll be working like a madman, and by the time that this is out, probably another 10 will be ready to be scheduled. Depending on how many we get, it may just become a weekly show.
Yeah, so be looking forward to that. I know Alex and Aaron might do a loose cannon because I may be taking a little bit of time off this week, depending on how my medical things go this week. I'm hoping to get some reviews done this week. I do have Tales from the Loop from Free League Publishing I want to talk about, and some other things. I'm working on some other stuff in the background right now. But it's kind of a slow period right now, so we'll just have to wait and see what we get for review. So
I've got some movies, and that's pretty much it in that realm. I don't have much else. Some games I got to catch up on, a little bit here, a little bit there. Nothing too major right now. I think we're sort of in a lull until probably closer to April.
Yeah. So either way, we're still going to be doing the weekly show. There'll still be Future Imperfect and other things coming out over the next little bit.
And I'll mention it here because we're not going to do a prototype on it. I watched the New Games Plus Expo when I was visiting family. It was interesting. It was, I think, ProZD. You've probably seen his name.
Mm-hmm.
He's the dude that does a lot of the. He used to do Vine and anime trope videos and stuff. Like, good voice actor kind of guy. I think he's doing voice acting now. Well, he was hosting it. It was the first time they did a fully English show. Last year they announced Persona 4 Golden for PC. Sega wasn't a part of it this year. There was not anything. There's some indie titles that looked interesting. Probably the big surprise there was they showcased Blaster Master 03, and that's coming out. So that's exciting. And then there's going to be more things. I believe the Future Game Show is, oh my God.
Because my wife doesn't know how to silence her goddamn phone.
The Future Game Show is coming out at the end of the month, so maybe we'll bundle a couple things together there and talk about that.
So anyway, guys, as we're going to get out of here, hopefully you will have a fantastic week ahead. Thank you for joining us here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. So for Twig, we have been
Alex.
I've been Mike the Birdman saying, be excellent to each other and always use Vibrate. We'll talk to you guys again next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.